Wisconsin State Capitol programming is made possible with support from Quick Trip, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Counties Association. Wisconsin Eye is an independent, nonprofit public affairs broadcast network. Watch Wisconsin Eye on Spectrum Channels 995 and 363 and at wisi.org.
I got the gavel, Paul. Be good today. Okay. Folks, we're going to get started here today for our first Senate Health Committee of this session. We're going to ask folks to please silence their cell phones, not to be disruptive to others that are speaking here today. We're going to have Bill take our roll for us.
Okay. Senator Cabral-Gravera.
Here.
Senator Teston. Here. Senator Felskowski.
Here.
Senator Jock, on his way. Senator Hesselbein.
Here.
Senator Carpenter.
Here.
Okay, well, this is going to be our public health hearing for the Senate Committee of Health. Please be aware that Wisconsin Eye is recording and broadcasting our meeting live today. Yeah, we're starting off the session good there. If you're planning on testifying, please fill out the forms available outside the door and make sure that staff gets that. If you have any questions, please feel comfortable to ask them. If you are testifying and you need any special assistance or you need to leave, please let us know. If you are in a group and want to testify together, that is also something that can happen. If folks are interested, please let us know if you're going to be testifying in a group. Some members might step away during this meeting. So if you have testimony to submit, please do that. They will get the testimony that you do submit. We are hoping to be wrapping up by 1 o'clock today, so please keep your remarks brief and be cognitive of what folks are saying in front of you. If you have a different message to share, please do that. And then we will be taking these items in the order listed on our notice. So to start today, we are going to be starting with SB 27. So this will be Representative Titzel and Senator Weingard. I'm going to put my stuff over here.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chairwoman Cabral-Gravera and members of the committee for allowing me to testify on Senate Bill 27 relating to spinal cord injury research grant funding. In short, this important legislation would require the Department of Health Services, DHS, to establish a grant program for research into spinal cord injuries and appoint a spinal cord injury council to administer that program. It is important to note that after our attempts last session, as well as this current legislative session, to have this bill to become law, Governor Evers has also recognized how important it is as well and has included the legislation in his current biennial budget bill. Please know that this legislation is not just simply the right thing to do for a legislative policy perspective, but also very personal to me, as I and members of my staff and others I know have suffered neck and spinal cord injuries. And in fact, it was a spinal cord injury that I suffered while on duty as a police officer that inadvertently and ultimately led me to become a state senator. As you may have heard before and will likely hear repeatedly today during testimony on this bill, the question is no longer whether a cure for paralysis will be found, but when it will be found. The council established by this bill would bring together doctors, scientists, veterans, and other individuals with spinal cord injuries to work toward that goal. The bill also tasked the council in developing criteria for DHS to evaluate and award grants and would review and make recommendations on grant applications. A key aspect of the council is that it does not consist solely of scientific professionals. It also includes individuals with spinal cord injury, have family members with spinal cord injury, and veterans with spinal cord injury. Their inclusion is designed to give attention to research leading to actual results rather than findings which are mostly academic in nature. As required in SB 27, every 2 years, grant recipients would be required to participate in a symposium demonstrating their progress and provide collaborators an opportunity, lost my space here, an opportunity to share ideas in the effort to find a cure. In addition, in January of each year, DHS would submit an annual report to the legislature identifying grant recipients and the purpose for which the grants were used. This bill is absolutely vital for so many people throughout Wisconsin and beyond who are waiting for a cure either for themselves or a loved one. We have made substantial progress regarding a wide range of other medical conditions and illnesses, including Alzheimer's, cancer, HIV/AIDS, countless infectious diseases, among many other things, and I know we can do the same for spinal cord injuries as well. This bill would help to move us in that direction. And I want to thank you again for sharing and hearing Senate Bill 27 today, helping to raise awareness about spinal cord injuries. Passing this bill is a real substantive action that we can take to finally find a cure, and I urge this committee's support for this bill. Senator?
Thank you, Senator Cabral Guevara. That's the first time I had to say that. And
It's a tongue twister.
Yeah. So I am honored. Basically, Senator Weingart said almost everything that I was going to say. But I think this is one of the bills I think that's going to be very important in research. Wisconsin leads the area in research for a lot of different areas in medical research and through our UW and what have you. This would establish a grant program that would then be distributed by DHS. Some of the things that we'll have a kind of a technical amendment that'll come out because there was something that was said in the bill that we need to change. And the current language says the department shall spend no more than 8% on administrative expenses. The amendment will change it to say that the grantee will spend no more than 8% on administrative expenses. So they will administer the grants, but then you have to do research with it. I think we have a great opportunity to help people. Myself, as many people know in this room, I've had 3 back surgeries in the past month and a half, and I'm not doing this for any self-serving measures, but it could be any one of us that could be affected by a spinal cord injury, and it doesn't take much, a slip, a fall, a accident, and we could all be in the exact same thing. You're going to hear some great testimony today from some people that it could affect even deeper than Senator Weingart and I. And I think it'll be very impactful, and I think you'll learn a lot. As the senator had said, even the governor has come on board with this and wants to see this. So we're hoping that this bill passes and that it would be signed into law and that it would be part of the next budget. And with that, we'll take any questions.
So the only thing I have a question on is, and I don't know if we do this in grants, this might be so. Are these grants intended for Wisconsin-based universities and Wisconsin-based research, or would these grants be available in and out of state?
I'm going to turn that to Ledge Council.
All right, so the grant program, the department has to award grants to persons in this state for research into spinal cord injuries.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Probably doesn't mean that they can't collaborate,
Yeah.
with other entities. I think that would be, the focus would be to keep it here so that we know that the dollars are working here and we can kind of have control over to make sure that we're having the impact that we want to get something solved.
To recap last session, this was heard in assembly, correct? It was heard in assembly. Did it get exec last session in assembly?
I don't believe it did.
It was late in the session.
It was,
Late in
yeah,
the
it was.
session.
It was very late, and I think the bill changed a little bit, and we have more input from doctors, scientists, veterans, and what have you. We've made this council, and there may be another part of that amendment that'll say that Right now it says may have a symposium every 2 years. We might put in a shall be when necessary by a vote of the council, because you don't want to have a meeting just to have a meeting. But if the vote of the council says, hey, we need to have a meeting so we can find out where we're at, where we're going with this, so we may end up changing it to that. We have a question into Ledge Council and the drafter right now to see if that would be a good way to change that.
Okay, and then in Senate didn't hear this last session because it was later in the session.
Too late.
Yeah, it was too late.
Okay. Senator Jock?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the issues that sometimes comes up in bills like this, I'm certainly very supportive of that research. That was actually what I came to UW-Madison for. But I know there have been issues before with human cloning, embryo destructive research, Board of Children's Body Parts, that sort of thing. Is that potentially a guardrail you'd be willing to put into the bill?
I'll ask Ledge Council on that one if that is currently in there.
I don't think there's anything mentioned in the bill on those issues currently.
Okay.
But I don't know, and I don't know that they do that use that type of stuff for.
I saw some, and certainly there are a number of areas where they've been very clear that it holds no potential because of the type. So I just and perhaps we'll have some clarification on that from some of the researchers here to testify.
I could just add, even though those topics aren't explicitly addressed, the way the bill is set up is the council would develop criteria for DHS to evaluate and award grants under the grant program. So perhaps the council on its own could determine to include that in criteria, but it's not required.
There's no restriction binding on the council.
Correct.
The way it's currently
Correct.
And I can touch base with you outside of here.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you. Good to see you, Representative.
Good to see you.
I just wanted to do a statement at the beginning, just saying thank you. I remember hearing this. The Senator and I were in college universities, and we heard wonderful testimony from faces that look very familiar. So thanks again for bringing it forward this session. I'm really hoping we can get it done.
And that's one of the things that we worked on, is trying to get some of the stuff out in the beginning that was kind of didn't get finished at the end. So we wanted to make sure we were working on this prior to even November.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions from folks today? Okay, then let us get into testimony here from our guests.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers. Who's up? Mr. Blackmore. And then we'll have Mike Mohr second. And then after that, we will have Dan Hellenbrand.
Those are the three that want to go.
Or did you want to go as a group?
Would be better. We were planning on a little bit order. Yeah, wondering if I could go before. I think we just turned the cards around.
Okay, let's turn the cards around then.
All right, let's move this.
Mike, Dan, and then Mohr. Oh, sorry about that. Got him. Okay. Whatever works best for you. We're flexible.
You'll be over here, yeah.
Oh, we're all together. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm figuring it out. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Chair Cabral-Guevara and members of the committee. My name is Mike Mohr. I live in Madison. I grew up in Sheboygan. I've lived in Wisconsin pretty much my whole life. I'm really excited to be here today, and I thank you for your time and consideration of Senate Bill 27. I have a spinal cord injury. 26 years ago, when I was 15, I was a member of the swim team at Sheboygan North High School. At the time, our starting blocks were in the shallow end of the pool, about 3.5 feet deep. At practice one day, I did a racing start off the blocks and hit my head on the bottom of the pool. Okay, I instantly broke the 5th vertebrae in my neck and was paralyzed from that accident. Now, I'm paralyzed from the shoulders down with what's called a complete injury. That is, I have no feeling or movement below my shoulders, and I have limited arm movement with no finger dexterity. I also don't have much in the way of sensation in my hands or in my arms. Now, what is a spinal cord injury? The spinal cord is part of the central nervous system along with our brain. It is the communication pathway between our brain and the rest of our body. Now, injury occurs through trauma or illness that disrupts this communication. The result is a lack of function and sensation throughout the body. Spinal cord injuries are permanent. There are no curative therapies available to regenerate the damaged tissue, and no amount of physical therapy, well-wishing, or other natural interventions can fix what's been damaged. It's not a matter of will, determination, or working hard enough. That's just how our physiology works. The result of my injury has been a tremendous life change. You see, my paralysis affects all areas of my life. When you look at me, it's obvious that I can't walk. I use a wheelchair. You can see that. But you see, my spinal cord injury impacts so much more than that. Nearly all my activities of daily living are impacted. I require assistance, for example, with a morning routine, just getting up, getting dressed, washed up, transferred into my wheelchair, and getting going for the day. That alone takes a couple of hours and a personal care worker to assist. Throughout the day, I require help with a variety of activities, such as meal preparation, laundry assistance, getting groceries, housekeeping, and so on. And at night, I require help with a lengthy night routine, which can include a pretty lengthy bowel routine that on its own takes a couple of hours, as well as assistance with showering, getting positioned into bed. All these things take significant amounts of time and require assistance from others to complete them. Additionally, life with a spinal cord injury often results in other secondary health issues. These can include frequent urinary tract infections, skin breakdown or pressure sores, severe lymphedema in lower extremities, and chronic pain. Personally, I've had a couple of severe pressure sores that have required pretty lengthy hospital stays after surgery, hospital stays of 2 and even 3 months. Also, it's not unusual for folks with spinal cord injury to have co-occurring mental health diagnoses, for example, depression. Indeed, suicide rates among people with spinal cord injuries are higher than the general population. Life with a spinal cord injury is a hard life. It's still a good life. I work, I travel, I go to concerts, do fun things with my friends, but it's a hard life. Now, spinal cord injuries also result in significant financial costs, both to the individual and the state. We use expensive medical equipment. My wheelchair, for example, costs about $25,000. We take prescription medications, have frequent medical appointments, and have occasional hospitalizations. The costs from the hours of personal care that I described are also pretty high. There are roughly 10,000 people in Wisconsin living with paralysis, and we estimate that the cost of care to be about $300 million each year. The vast majority of that money comes from the state, as most of us with spinal cord injuries rely on state funding sources such as Medicaid. Also, the post-injury unemployment rate is close to 70%, so the state is incurring additional costs by not receiving income tax and by paying out supplemental income. The state of Wisconsin has a financial interest here. Curative therapies could reduce the cost of care significantly. Even incremental therapies that might improve, say, my function just a little bit, would reduce my reliance on personal care workers and overall improve my health. Unfortunately, there is a dearth of funding for spinal cord injury research right now. We don't see private investment from pharmaceutical companies because there's just not a strong profit motive here. There's not a lot of money to be made pursuing a cure for spinal cord injury. We also, unfortunately, don't see it prioritized in state or federal grants right now. The bill we are proposing here fills this gap, and it does so in a really intelligent way. We're asking for state funds to grant research, grants that will target curative therapies, grants that will have smart conditions that command efficient use. This bill is modeled after programs that are already working well in other states. These programs have proven track records that are moving the ball forward. I'm excited to see it now here in Wisconsin. Spinal cord injuries result in a huge impact to the individual, a huge impact to our friends and families, a huge impact to the communities in which we live, and frankly, a huge impact to the state. I'd really like to see the state of Wisconsin do something about it, so I encourage you to support Senate Bill 27. You're going to hear from Dan Hellenbrand, a researcher at UW, to tell you a little bit more about our bill, and also Dr. Blackmore, another highly regarded researcher. But before that, if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
It's a slightly off topic, but could you tell me how difficult it has been for you to get assistance, either through personal care or whatever, to help you get ready to do your daily activities?
Yeah, I mean, the big challenge is, these days, finding and recruiting personal care workers. I mean, I'm grateful to the state of Wisconsin that funds in-home health care for me, which is great. But these days, finding folks who are willing and able to do that work can prove pretty challenging. But yeah, it's definitely a difficult life, and talking through people how to help me get up in the morning and do my routines and all that stuff. It's challenging and it's tiresome, for sure. Yeah, good question.
And if someone sort of shows up, you're basically stuck there.
Yeah. If I don't have help, I don't have options, for sure.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. And we'll move on.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you were here last session, were you not, to testify?
Indeed, yes.
I see a couple folks that were here last session. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Chairperson and members of the committee. I am Dan Hellenbrand, and I am here today to express support for Senate Bill 27. In 2003, I was working as a carpenter and suffered a C5 spinal cord injury after a fall from a house rear building in Middleton. My spinal stabilization surgery was done by some great surgeons right here at the University Hospital, and throughout my rehabilitation process, I have gained incredible respect for so many amazing healthcare workers. I have use of my arms, but really no triceps and no finger movement and limited wrist movement. So it took a long time to relearn how to do normal daily tasks, and still requires a lot of help from my wife Amy today. After my accident, I went back to school and earned a bachelor's degree from Miami University of Ohio and a master's degree in biomedical engineering from UW-Madison. Since 2010, I have been working at the UW as a researcher in the Department of Neurological Surgery. The reason I pursued my master's degree in biomedical engineering, and the reason I am currently working on my PhD, is because I firmly believe research will lead to better treatments for spinal cord injury. To date, there have been extensive improvements in terms of spinal stabilization surgery. However, no substantial improvements have been made in terms of functional recovery after spinal cord injury. As Mike mentioned, functional losses place enormous physical, mental, and financial burdens on someone living with the injury, significantly reducing their quality of life. Most of the funding for spinal cord injury comes from federal, NIH, and DoD grants that require preliminary data. State-level funding, as proposed in Senate Bill 27, will be crucial in this early exploratory research needed to gain this data. Moreover, state-level medical research programs such as in Kentucky have already proven to be successful. Dr. Susan Harakama's group at the University of Louisville discovered that a patient with a motor complete injury was able to control leg movements with the aid of epidural electrical stimulation. Her work created a paradigm shift where instead of thinking we need to develop compensation strategies for spinal cord injury patients to achieve functional goals, we should rather be thinking of the injured nervous system as having potential for adaptation and modification to facilitate recovery for those patients. Senate Bill 27 is specifically designed with this bold paradigm shift in mind to develop therapies that promote functional recovery for patients with chronic spinal cord injury. Furthermore, I'm excited about Senate Bill 27 both as someone dealing with a spinal cord injury and as a researcher working to develop treatments for spinal cord injury. because I believe this bill is designed efficiently, directing financial support at solving the problem. For example, these research grants target the development of deliverable therapies designed to greatly enhance the quality of life for someone living with the injury. The research grants remain in the state and support local researchers, institutions, and businesses. The research grants are programmatically tiered, with larger grants designed to push current science towards clinical trials and smaller grants designed to test new exploratory findings. The program implements a state advisory council composed of researchers, clinicians, and most importantly, those living with spinal cord injury like me, to recommend which projects should be funded. The program requires a symposium to present results, which promotes collaboration among researchers, and the program mandates a low indirect rate of 8%, so that taxpayer dollars go directly to the research and not general administrative funds. In closing, I'd like to thank the authors of this legislation for their commitment to spinal cord injury research. Senator Weingart and Representatives Tittle, Whitkey, and Anderson have developed a strong bill that I hope you will give your full consideration. My sincere appreciation to those of you who have already indicated your support by signing on to this legislation, including Chairperson Cabral Guevara, Senator Carpenter, and Senator Hesselbein. Thank you again for your interest and attention today. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I'm just curious, when, I don't have a medical bone in my body, so when you talk about what's happening in the wheel, so are we actually using outside apparatus to re-stimulate, to provide the electrical stimulation through the damaged spinal cord?
So yeah, it's interesting in terms of what I was talking about that work, but basically what it is, it's epidural stimulation, so it is an outside electrical stimulator, but it's because that patient was able to control those movements with their brain. So it wasn't as much as just almost like a robotic movement. It was controlled by the patient, but it's more that the spinal cord is injured. So by having that extra stimulation, it's almost taking control of a little bit of what was left there for the spinal cord. Where without the stimulation, they cannot control the movement, but with that little bit of stimulation, they can.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So one thing that stood out to me last session was the percentage of funding that went to general admission, administrative kind of stuff versus the funding that went to the research. You're saying 8% would be the max that would be able to go to the general administrative fees and funds and so forth, and then 92% would go solely to research?
That's correct.
And what is it typically? I mean, is that
So,
typical? Is that what it's aligned with, or what typically do you usually?
I mean,
see?
with the federal grants, it's probably more like 50.
So
I don't know
50%?
exactly off the top of my head, but yeah, to go for all the overhead costs and everything. And I believe that's why, even though there's a lot less in this, but a lot of the reason that so many of the people within the UW would still be interested in that is because, as I mentioned, it's a lot of that preliminary data that's needed to apply for those federal grants can be, found through a lot of these state grants and things like that.
So there are folks that still would be interested if only 8% actually went to the administrative fees and so forth. They'd still be able to pick up
Absolutely.
this research project.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from folks?
One thing I wanted to mention just real quick too to Senator Carpenter for that last question is, you talked about healthcare, and that can be a huge problem. I mentioned my wife does all my healthcare. If she ever wants a vacation, trying to find a caregiver is a big deal, and then it can all of a sudden turn the vacation super expensive because you've got to get a separate healthcare to watch me while she's gone. That was a good question.
Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Thank you. We have Mr. Blackmore. Thank you for coming.
All right, Chairperson Cabral Guevara and members of the committee, thank you for hearing this. My name is Murray Blackmore. I'm a professor at Marquette University. I run a research lab that works on spinal cord injury. I serve on a federal review panel for grants. I help organize meetings, and of course my lab competes for grants. So I'm here to kind of give the insider scientist perspective on this bill. I'm also here as a family member. When I was 13, my mom suffered a spinal cord injury. She was paralyzed from the shoulders down. I watched her live for 27 years with the injury. About 10 years ago, I watched her die from it. Over the course of a couple months, her lungs slowly gave out. She slowly drowned. It's not a good way to die. And I'm sorry, but it's what's waiting for a lot of people in Wisconsin with high cervical injuries. So I say that to say this. I became a scientist to solve a problem, and I'm here today because I think this bill is a really smart, really effective way to do that. And the reason I think that is that I've looked at the outcomes. All right. So the whole idea here is that this is seed money, and it's been instituted in other states. So it's fair. Let's take a hard look at exactly what the outcomes have been in other states, and they kind of break into two categories. One is commercialization. All right. So researchers have been able to do pilot studies that then attract venture capital and then spin off startup companies. So there's two examples of that in Minnesota, and there's one in Ohio. There's a variation on that. You can do a study and then attract like industry support and then form a partnership and launch clinical trials that way. It amounts to the same thing. You're moving treatments into people, and you're advancing economic development. The other main way that researchers can use these funds, as you've already heard, is to compete for federal grants. Look, federal grants are big, but they're very slow and they're very, very cautious. So the play is you use state funds to quickly get the proof of principle data, and then you use that to compete for the federal grants. And this is nice because you can put a hard number on how effective this is. And it's 8-to-1. So far, from the numbers I've seen, for every $1 that states have put into these pilot funds, $8 in federal funding have come back as a result. That's an unusual number in my field, and it's made me think about, so what is it? What makes this so effective? It's a lot of things, this mechanism. It's fast, it's accountable, it's competitive, but if I had to pick one element, it's that review panel. You've already heard it. It's that mix of scientists and clinicians and critically people living with the injury, right? And what that panel can do is they can spot the ideas that have real-world impact in a way that a panel of pure scientists, which is what I'm on federally, just can't do or doesn't do. So it really works. I want to land on just one point, which is the degree to which scientifically Wisconsin is ready for this bill. So by my count, there are 14 different labs at 4 different institutions already working in the area of nerve repair. There's many more that I think we could pull in with this incentive. And very importantly, what Wisconsin has is a strength in actual tissue regeneration and really advanced genetic techniques. And that's important because the cure for spinal cord injury is going to take a variety of different approaches working together. And I think different regions are likely to have different strengths. So far, Minnesota and Washington, they've kind of gotten out front with this idea of electrical stimulation, which we've already heard about. It can benefit patients, but I think it has a real ceiling to how effective it can be. And the future is going to be these tissue regeneration and genetic approaches. So I think there's an opportunity for Wisconsin to take a leading role in that. And I'm going to take a quick detour about tissue regeneration based on the question. Let me say this, and I'm going to be very careful. I'm speaking for myself personally in my scientific opinion. I'm personally very sympathetic and sensitive to the issues you raise about embryonic tissue. Scientifically, we live in a world where stem cells can be derived from adult tissue, and I don't see a good scientific reason to push on the embryonic tissue. So scientifically, I don't see a reason to do it, and to the extent that I'd influence this panel, I would hope that that would not be the direction that we would go in Wisconsin, for what it's worth. Bottom line, if these funds exist, there's going to be, I predict, there's going to be really strong applications from all around the state. Certainly my lab will be among those. We're going to try to compete for these funds. There's no guarantee that we'll succeed. It's going to be a very competitive field. But I trust this panel to spot the applications with the very strongest impact. And I'm really excited to see what kind of initiatives, both private and federal, that we could launch here in Wisconsin. So I'll end there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
You had mentioned earlier 14 different facilities or 14 different states, or what was
Oh,
the
those
14?
are labs. I went
14
through,
labs
yeah.
throughout the country or Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin. I just went through kind of my mental Rolodex and said, who in Wisconsin is doing cutting-edge nerve regeneration research, and where are they? And by the time I was done with the list, it was 14 labs that I think have shovel-ready projects, like ready to go. It's a big number. Can I just say there's a huge irony here? Unite to Fight Paralysis is based in Minnesota, so that was the first state where this launched. But at the time, I don't think anyone would have picked Minnesota as having a particular strength in spinal cord injury. And then right next door in Wisconsin, I think, especially again with this tissue regeneration angle, much greater strength. So it's a little ironic that we're 7 years after them, if you will, 8 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for this gentleman? Nope. Thank you very much for your
Thank you very
testimony
much.
again this session. And then we have, we're at Matthew?
Yep.
We're at Matthew Rodreick. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Matthew Rodreick.
I'll be really brief. Thank you. Good morning, Senators. Chairperson Girl. Everybody's
good with
stumbling
Rachel.
over here.
Yeah.
RCG.
I'm Rachel.
CG.
RCG.
Thank you very much for taking the time hearing the testimony from our folks. And as you see from mine, I'll be very brief. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions that haven't come up. This is the fourth state where we have introduced this kind of legislation, as Murray just referenced. But very simply, I'm a father with a son with a spinal cord injury, and this July will be 15 years that he will from those 15 years on be spending the rest of his life in a chair. And that's why I'm here. That's why I investigated for a number of years all the states previous to the four that we have implemented, what they did and what worked and what didn't work. And very specifically driven very passionately by trying to move the dial, take discovery science out of academia and put it into human beings to make restorative change. We have done that, particularly in Minnesota, which is the longest standing. We are now over 100 individuals with complete paralysis who have had some measure of restored function. But as Murray mentioned, it's a puzzle. The pathology of spinal cord injury is complex, very, very difficult, and it's going to require a combination of factors. And so we are looking at states that have pieces of the puzzle. And Murray was very adept at explaining what Wisconsin has, and what Pennsylvania has, and what Ohio has. And the one thing that you haven't heard is that we are very actively looking for these programs to collaborate. I now was voted to be the Research Advisory Council chair for the next 2 years in Minnesota. I've served on that committee as a family member of someone with a spinal cord injury. And I can tell you what Murray said and what Dan said about the importance of people like us at the table to ask scientists, who I have great respect for, but there's a level of abstraction to the questions that they are asking and the work that they're doing, and it's necessary. They don't have to have a personal connection, but we are there to put a face on it and say, okay, well, what does this mean for my community? Where is it going? What is your plan if you meet your scientific aims? Where are you going? Because ultimately, for us in the community, for us as parents, we are looking for restored change. I don't want my son to spend the rest of his life in a chair. He may, and if that has to be the case, then I want him to use his hands, his fingers. I don't want him to catheterize anymore. I don't want him to take 2 hours to go to the bathroom in the morning. Change his life, quality of life, full life, to the better. And that's why we're here. That's what this is. There's nothing else hidden here. There's nothing else about this initiative, both nationally and here in Wisconsin, that it is nothing more than that. So thank you for your time. I hope you'll support it and move it along so we can get this done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from folks? No? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We have Miss Kajana. You sympathize with my name situation. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, it's a challenging name.
You got me, and most of the time people are caught on mine. So thank you.
My name is Kajana Satkunendrarajah, and I'm also a professor at the Department of Neurosurgery at the Medical College of Wisconsin. I'm going to give a slightly unique perspective. I moved here 4 years ago from the University of Toronto in Canada, and established my lab here during COVID, focused on spinal cord injury research at the VA Medical Center in Milwaukee. And so I'm not going to take, because everybody's explained it really well, but from a scientist perspective, I've been working on spinal cord injury for 20 years. And what I realized is, just like that, it can happen to any of us. Basic functions, like they explained, just breathing, how I'm changing my breathing as I'm talking and getting out of bed, is so simple that we take for granted, and that can be taken away. It can become really difficult or impossible. And that's why I think, from a scientist, is not for me to say, but talking to people who live with spinal cord injury, they've said, we don't want just wider sidewalks, but we want a change, a cure for spinal cord injury. And there's so many advances in neuroscience and spinal cord injury, yet we have not found a cure for spinal cord injury. So I moved here from Toronto, and I chose Wisconsin to be my home for my science and my personal life. So why did I come all the way here? So Medical College of Wisconsin is at the forefront of spinal cord injury studies. And all of spinal cord injury clinical trials that are happening around the world is actually happening at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And I wanted to be in a place where science that's happening in the benches, in the basic science labs, can be taken to the bedside to improve the lives of patients. So that's why I chose the department at the Medical College, to be able to find a place where what I discover in this lab would be taken to make a change in people's life. The program proposed here will remove many of the roadblocks that have been preventing us from finding a cure. So the bill, as Murray and others have explained, we need rigorous preliminary data to get federal funding to take basic science to find a cure. And if there's a stop, then we're at a roadblock to finding a cure. So funding like that's proposed here in Bill 27 would remove some of that roadblock, put money into our labs to find a cure that can be taken to the labs. So in summary, I think there's a track record for success based on how it has functioned in other states. And I hope all of you would support this bill so that we can continue to work and take our findings to those who that need it. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I can answer them.
Questions? Yes, Senator Jock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a little curious because you referenced the clinical trials that are taking place here in Wisconsin. And I am working on some clinical trial-related legislation. Are there any barriers that you're currently seeing in terms of individuals being able to access them through their insurance, as far as anything that is not covered by those that are conducting the trials, and maybe some of the supporting services?
No, actually, the reason that I brought this up is I was part of studies that looked at drugs that were being tried in the clinics the findings originated in Toronto, but Medical College of Wisconsin was part of the trial and leading. So we're well positioned to try new inventions in our state. And because of the population and where we're located, we're able to try. That's why we're part of many of the spinal cord injury trials that's happening around the world. So I think there's no barriers. What we're lacking is taking new innovations that stems from Wisconsin to the clinics or to trials. So I think we have some of the pieces already in place. So a funding like this would allow us to discover new curative therapies that can then be tried, not just in Wisconsin, but around the world.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks for coming to Wisconsin. Thanks for bringing your talent. Appreciate it. Gotcha. Gentleman in the yellow. You testified last session, didn't you, in assembly? Are you sure you don't want to testify today? I thought your testimony was pretty compelling last session.
I just would like to add one thing to your question about the caregiving.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, yeah, that's like one of the hardest things with finding caregivers. Pretty much, like as I look for a job, it's been very difficult to figure out where I'm going to go for a job, simply because if I'm too far away from the university, it's almost impossible to find caregiving where I'd be able to support myself. The reason I chose Madison is because of the university's nursing programs, and there's always people who are looking to gain experience. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Not going to
coming.
testify either? No? Are you going to testify this session?
I don't think we have enough time, but
We have time. We have time. If you would like to testify, we have time. I know you testified last session too.
Yep. Oh, you have a good memory.
Yeah, it was. They were impactful. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Senate Health Committee for letting me testify today. My name is John Martinson. I just like to say a few things about my life. Well, look, I'd like to tell you about how my spinal cord injury came about. Growing up on a farm in Wisconsin, my family grew tobacco, which involved a lot of manual labor and risk, especially hanging the tobacco in drying sheds. Being the oldest boy, my job was being up in the air, straddling two poles beneath my feet while hanging lats of tobacco. Another risky job that I did was being an iron worker all over the great state of Wisconsin. I worked on the Green Bay Packers practice facility, which is 65 feet to the peak. The bonus was that I had a bird's eye view of the Packers practicing in the field next to me. Being an avid deer hunter, I was always climbing trees for a better view and advantage point while hunting and never got hurt. Unlike 5 of my new friends who fell while being up in a tree stand and hunting. And don't get me started on my Harley riding experiences. I designed my own, lift to pick up my wheelchair, and then I've got a trike motorcycle that I swing my chair behind my back and I lock it in. And I also have a safety belt that goes around my midsection because I don't have no abdominal muscles. And then I got a suicide shifter and then a proportion valve on the handlebar brake to run front and back brake. And I've got 49,000 miles on my one bike. So very active in riding.
I see the theme shirt today. It says Harley.
Yeah. So, well, my luck ran out on June 17th, 2002 while working in my shop at home. I was spray painting the ceiling when I had to close the overhead door to spray the peak. It was really hot that day. I was in a hurry. I had a mask on, but it wasn't a respirator. I was really susceptible to the solvent that was in the paint, and I passed out and fell 12 feet, injuring my spinal cord, broke 4 ribs, punctured my lung, and I cracked my head pretty hard. The injury was right below my nipples, a thoracic 8. Luckily, they med-flighted me to UW Hospital, and I'm still here today to testify. And I'm blessed that I'm able to come here because a lot of my friends aren't dealing with health issues, and plus finding a caregiver to help them be here. So, well, now a wheelchair is my expensive shoes, more expensive than Air Jordan shoes, which can cost around $200 to $400. Mine runs around $3,000. Unlike my colleague Mike Mohr, his shoes cost around $25,000 or more. I call Mike's power wheelchair his Air Mohr shoes. I wouldn't wish a spinal cord injury or disease on my worst enemy. I've seen and experienced all the mental and physical pain that inflicts on everyday people and their families. Please support SB 27 before more people's luck runs out. Thank you much, and if you have any questions. I just want to add one thing too. This is kind of like if we can give grants out, and the NIH sees if there's a promising research, a lot of times that money will come in from the NIH, which is quite a bit more, and then so we don't have no control over how much the indirect cost is on the larger NIH grant. So I mean that's kind of the another incentive for these universities to get involved with this type of a grant. It'll lead into bigger grants from the NIH and other resources. So that's kind of important, I thought. Any questions?
So you coming, Milwaukee, Harley Davidson is having a big anniversary coming up. You coming for that?
Oh yeah.
A group of people that come into Milwaukee with you? And...
Yeah, I try to make it every year.
Oh, okay.
And I go to Sturgis too, so.
Okay.
I have a roll hook cushion on my motorcycle, so then I can travel quite a ways without worrying about hurting myself.
Oh, that's great. Get around more than I do. Thanks.
Well, thanks again, and we hope you guys support us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So coming from a nurse here, I mean, your stories that you share, I've heard so many times before, hence why I've been very supportive of this and all the communication that we've had. But for some folks that haven't necessarily been within the world of healthcare and have seen and heard the stories that you folks share, I'm very, very thankful for you to make it in here today. I know it can be challenging at times. If it's any consolation, we're working really hard on workforce development issues. I was a home care caregiver, CNA, home care nurse, still do home care within the world as a nurse practitioner. So I understand the challenges that you folks are bringing up here today, and we're hoping to address some of that here this session too. So thank you for your testimony on both topics. Appreciate it. Thank you.